Hard work is not the reason you're broke. Effort is not the reason you're stuck. And struggle is not a badge of honor. It's a warning sign. The richest people on earth are not the hardest workers. They are the clearest thinkers. Money doesn't respond to effort. It responds to leverage. Success doesn't reward exhaustion. It rewards alignment. If hard work created wealth, most people would already be rich. This audiobook will dismantle the lie you were taught about success and replace it with the mindset that actually earns money, power, and freedom. Hard work sounds noble. It feels honest. It feels safe. That's why it was sold to you so aggressively. From the moment you were old enough to understand words, you were told the same story. Work hard and everything will work out. Put in the hours. Keep your head down. Don't complain. Grind. And if you're struggling, just work harder. But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Hard work was never designed to make you wealthy. It was designed to make you useful. Useful to companies. Useful to systems. Useful to people who think instead of sweat. That's the key. Hard work became a moral virtue because it keeps people obedient, busy, and controllable. When you're exhausted, you don't question the rules. When you're busy, you don't step back and think. When you're proud of suffering, you don't notice you're being underpaid. You have a choice. You can keep believing effort equals reward, or you can look at reality. Because reality is ruthless, but it's honest. If hard work created wealth, the hardest workers on earth would be the richest. Construction workers, farm laborers, single parents working 2 jobs, immigrants pulling 12-hour shifts. They are not rich. Meanwhile, people who barely look busy are earning more in a month than others earn in a decade. Same planet, same 24 hours, completely different outcomes. Why? Because money doesn't respond to effort. Money responds to results. Say it again. Money does not care how hard you try. Money only cares what you produce. Effort is invisible. Results are paid. That's not cruel. That's neutral. The system doesn't wake up and ask how tired you are. It asks one question. What value did you create? And here's where most people get stuck. They confuse movement with progress. They confuse exhaustion with effectiveness. They confuse being busy with being valuable. That's the lie. Let's break it with a simple comparison. The laborer and the owner. The employee and the strategist. Both may work the same hours. Sometimes the laborer works more. Sometimes the employee stays later, but the rewards are not even in the same universe. Why? Because one is paid for effort, the other is paid for decisions. One trades time. The other builds leverage. One asks, "What do I need to do today?" The other asks, "What should exist tomorrow?" That's the key. Hard work feels productive because it gives immediate feedback. You feel tired. You feel accomplished. You feel like you earned rest. Thinking doesn't feel like that. Thinking feels slow, uncomfortable, uncertain. So people avoid it. They'd rather do 10 more tasks than sit alone and ask one dangerous question. Is this even the right direction? You have a choice. You can stay loyal to effort, or you can become loyal to outcomes. Here's the brutal truth. Hard work without direction is not virtue. It's self-betrayal. The system loves workers who never ask where the road leads, because as long as you're moving, you won't notice you're going in circles. Effort is invisible. Results are paid. Let that sink in. You don't get rewarded for what you go through. You get rewarded for what you deliver. That's why 2 people can put in the same years, the same energy, the same sacrifice, and end up with wildly different lives. One followed instructions. The other questioned assumptions. One waited to be told what to do. The other decided what mattered. You don't need their permission. You don't need permission to think differently. You don't need permission to question the rules you inherited. You don't need permission to admit the advice you followed isn't working. Hard work was sold as the answer because it's simple. It requires no thinking, just compliance. Show up, do the task, repeat. But wealth requires something harder. Responsibility. Responsibility for your direction. Responsibility for your direction. Responsibility for your choices. Responsibility for your results. It's not about laziness. It's not about avoiding work. It's not about shortcuts. It's not about effort. It's about effectiveness. Say it clearly. It's not about how hard you work. It's about what your work produces. That's the key. So what do you do differently starting now? First, stop bragging about how busy you are. Busyness is not a badge of honor. it's often a red flag. Second, audit where your effort goes. Ask yourself, if I do this for 5 more years, where does it lead? If the answer is vague, you're drifting. Third, separate movement from leverage. Some actions multiply. Most just maintain. Learn the difference. Fourth, stop waiting for validation. People who benefit from your effort will never tell you to stop. You don't need their permission. And finally, measure your life by results, not fatigue. At the end of the day, exhaustion proves nothing. Outcomes do. Effort is invisible. Results are paid. This chapter isn't telling you to stop working. It's telling you to stop worshiping work. Because when you confuse effort with progress, you become loyal to the very thing that keeps you stuck. You have a choice. You can keep proving how hard you work. Or you can start proving that you think. And once you understand that hard work was never the currency, once you see the lie clearly, you're ready for the next truth. You mastered effort. Now let's talk about what money actually responds to. Chapter 2. Money moves toward value, not struggle. Money is not emotional. Money is not sentimental. Money does not care about your effort, your intentions, or your story. Money responds to one thing: value. That's the key. Most people believe money is earned through sacrifice, through long hours, through suffering quietly and hoping someone notices. That belief keeps them stuck because money does not move towards struggle. It moves towards solutions. Say it again until it sinks in. Value attracts money. Pain repels it. You can be exhausted and broke at the same time. Millions of people are. Fatigue is not a signal of value. It's just a signal that energy was spent, and energy spent in the wrong direction doesn't compound. It disappears. You have a choice. You can keep asking, why isn't my hard work paying off? Or you can ask the only question that matters: what problem am I solving? That question changes everything. Money flows to people who reduce pain for others, save time for others, or create leverage for others. Not to people who suffer privately and hope for fairness. Fairness is not a financial strategy. Look around. The highest paid people are not the ones working the longest hours. They are the ones whose decisions affect the most people. Their impact scales. That's the difference. One smart system can outperform 10 years of grinding in the wrong direction. One clear idea can replace thousands of hours of labor. One leveraged solution can earn while you sleep. That's not luck. That's alignment. Value attracts money. Pain repels it. Most people reverse this. They start with effort and hope. Value shows up later. They exhaust themselves before they ever become useful. That's backwards. Value comes first. Money follows. You don't need their permission to understand this. You don't need permission to stop chasing approval, promotions, or praise. You don't need permission to question why your effort hasn't turned into income. Here's where transformation begins. Stop measuring your worth by how much you suffer. Stop telling stories about how hard it is. Stop expecting recognition for endurance. It's not about how much you endure. It's about how much you improve something. That's the key. Ask yourself this, honestly. If I disappeared tomorrow, what problem would stop being solved? If the answer is unclear, money will be unclear too. Because money follows clarity. It follows usefulness. It follows leverage. You have a choice. You can keep trading time for pay, or you can build something that works without you. You don't need to be the best. You need to be relevant. You need to be specific. You need to be effective. This is where people get uncomfortable. Because becoming valuable requires thinking. It requires responsibility. It requires admitting that effort alone is not enough. It's not about motivation. It's about positioning. Say it clearly. It's not about working harder. It's about solving bigger problems. That's the key. Here's what to do next. First, identify one problem you can solve better than most people around you. Not perfectly, better. Second, make it repeatable. If your solution only works once, it's a job. If it works repeatedly, it's leverage. Third, detach your identity from struggle. Struggle is not who you are. It's just a phase you were taught to romanticize. Fourth, stop explaining how hard things are. Start explaining how they work. People pay for clarity, not complaints. Value attracts money. Pain repels it. That phrase should guide every decision you make from here forward. When you consider an opportunity, ask, does this increase my value or just my workload? When you feel busy, ask, is this creating leverage or just movement? When you feel tired, ask, am I solving the right problem or just proving effort? You have a choice. Most people will never make this shift. They'll keep grinding, keep hoping, keep telling themselves their time will come. Time doesn't reward effort. Time rewards strategy. You don't need their permission to think this way. You don't need permission to step out of the herd. You don't need permission to stop chasing struggle and start building value. Because once you understand this truth, once you stop worshiping pain and start designing solutions, you move closer to the real source of wealth. Money follows value, always has, always will. And now that you understand what attracts money, you're ready to confront the next illusion that keeps people stuck. You've stopped glorifying struggle. Now it's time to dismantle the mindset that worships effort. Chapter 3. The poor mindset worships effort. The rich mindset designs outcomes. Most people are not poor because they lack discipline. They're poor because they're disciplined in the wrong direction. That's the key. Poor thinking asks one question over and over: how hard can I work? Rich thinking asks a different question: how does this multiply? That single difference creates completely different lives. One mindset worships effort. The other designs outcomes. Say it clearly. Design beats discipline every time. You can be incredibly disciplined and still be stuck. You can wake up early, work late, never miss a day, and still go nowhere. Because discipline without design just makes you efficient at staying small. You have a choice. You can keep proving how committed you are, or you can start deciding what actually matters. The poor mindset believes time is money, so they sell it. Hour by hour, year by year, they trade presence for pay and call it security. The rich mindset knows time is limited, so they stop selling it. They use it to build things that work without them. Assets, systems, leverage. That's the key. One person asks, what do I need to do today? The other asks, what should exist when I'm done? Same effort, completely different outcomes. Design beats discipline every time. This is why two people can be equally hardworking and end up worlds apart. One followed instructions, the other questioned the game. You don't need their permission to question it too. No one benefits from you designing a better life except you. So no one will encourage it. They'll praise your work ethic instead. They'll call you reliable. They'll reward you just enough to keep you where you are. That's not an accident. Effort is easy to manage. Outcomes are not. Here's where most people get uncomfortable. Design requires thinking before acting. It requires choosing direction before applying force. It requires patience before payoff. And thinking doesn't feel productive, so people avoid it. They stay busy. They stay disciplined. They stay exhausted. But they never ask, does this scale? That's the question that separates workers from builders. You have a choice. You can keep asking how much more you can handle, or you can ask how much more this can grow. It's not about laziness. It's not about shortcuts. It's not about effort. It's about structure. That's the key. Look at anyone who earns without constant labor. Someone with a business, someone with equity, someone with intellectual property, someone with intellectual property. They didn't outwork everyone forever. They outthought the problem early. They designed first. Then they applied discipline to the design. Design beats discipline every time. Here's the transformation. Stop asking, what do I need to do next? Start asking, what outcome do I want and what creates it repeatedly? Stop focusing on tasks. Start focusing on mechanisms. Stop glorifying hustle. Start respecting leverage. You don't need their permission to change how you think. You don't need permission to stop chasing approval and start chasing effectiveness. Most people will never do this, not because it's impossible, but because it threatens their identity. They've built their self-worth around being hardworking. Let that go. Hardworking is not a destination. Effective is. That's the key. Here's a simple test you can run starting today. Look at your daily actions and ask, if I repeat this for 5 years, does it compound or does it reset every morning? If it resets, you're trading time. If it compounds, you're building. Design beats discipline every time. This is why rich thinking looks calm. It's not frantic. It's intentional. It's selective. They say no more than they say yes. They protect thinking time. They don't confuse motion with progress. You have a choice. You can keep staying busy and calling it productive, or you can slow down, design the outcome, and then move with precision. It's not about motivation, it's about architecture. Say it again. Design beats discipline every time. Once you understand this, effort stops being your identity. It becomes a tool, something you apply deliberately, not desperately. And when effort serves design, instead of replacing it, money and success finally start to make sense. Because now, you're no longer reacting, you're creating. And once you stop worshiping effort and start designing outcomes, another uncomfortable truth appears. Most people stay busy because thinking scares them. You've learned to design. Now let's confront what busyness is really hiding. Chapter 4. If you're always busy, you're probably avoiding thinking busy feels productive. Busy feels responsible. Busy feels safe. That's why people cling to it. But here's the truth. Busyness is often a hiding place. That's the key. When you're always busy, you don't have to think. You don't have to decide. You don't have to confront the uncomfortable question of whether what you're doing even matters. You just keep moving. But hear this clearly. Motion is not progress. You can move all day and go nowhere. You can fill every hour and still avoid the one thing that would change everything. Thinking. Strategic thinking is uncomfortable. It forces you to slow down. It forces you to look at results instead of effort. It forces you to admit when a direction is wrong. So people stay busy instead. You have a choice. You can keep filling your calendar, or you can start protecting your mind. High earners understand this difference early. They don't work more hours than everyone else. They guard their thinking time more aggressively than their working time. That's the key. They schedule space. They block silence. They design before they execute. Meanwhile, everyone else brags about being slammed, overloaded, exhausted. That's not ambition. That's avoidance. Motion is not progress. Busyness becomes a socially acceptable excuse. It sounds responsible. No one questions it. No one challenges it. But ask yourself this. If you're so busy, why aren't the results obvious? If the hours were working, you'd see it by now. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need permission to stop reacting and start choosing. You don't need permission to think. Yet most people never do, because thinking removes the illusion of control. It shows you where you've been wasting time. It exposes habits that feel productive but lead nowhere. That's uncomfortable. So people stay busy. Emails, meetings, tasks, notifications, noise, all movement, no leverage. Motion is not progress. Here's the discipline shift. Stop asking, what do I need to do next? Start asking, what decision have I been avoiding? That's the key, because the biggest breakthroughs don't come from doing more. They come from choosing better. It's not about activity. It's about clarity. Say it again. It's not about movement. It's about direction. High performers don't react faster. They think deeper. They choose fewer things. They eliminate more than they add. They understand something most people miss. If you don't decide how to use your time, someone else will. You have a choice. You can let urgency run your life, or you can reclaim authority over your attention. Here's what transformation looks like in real terms. First, schedule thinking like it matters because it does. Non-negotiable. No phone. No noise. Just you and the hard questions. Second, audit your busyness. Ask, which of these tasks actually moves the needle? Eliminate the rest or delegate them. Third, stop responding to everything immediately. Speed feels important. Impact is what pays. Fourth, measure days by decisions, not tasks. One good decision can outweigh 100 completed items. Motion is not progress. Busyness is often rewarded early in life. Teachers praise it. Managers encourage it. Society celebrates it. But wealth doesn't. Money responds to leverage. Leverage comes from thinking. That's the key. You don't need their permission to step off the hamster wheel. You don't need permission to disappoint people who benefit from your constant availability. Your future doesn't need you busy. It needs you clear. Most people never make this shift. They wear busyness like armor. They mistake exhaustion for importance. Don't, because once you stop hiding behind activity, something powerful happens. You start seeing patterns. You start spotting waste. You start designing instead of reacting. And that's when effort finally starts working for you instead of against you. You've learned to stop worshiping hard work. You've learned to stop glorifying struggle. You've learned to design outcomes instead of chasing effort. Now you've learned this truth. Motion is not progress. And once you stop confusing the two, you're ready for the real advantage that separates earners from owners. You slow down enough to think. Now let's talk about what actually multiplies results. Chapter 5. Leverage is the real currency of the wealthy. Is not built with effort alone. It's built with leverage. That's the key. Most people try to win by pushing harder. Longer hours, more energy, more sacrifice. And they wonder why the results barely move. Because effort, by itself, is linear. Leverage makes it exponential. Say it clearly. Leverage turns effort into exponential results. The wealthy don't have more discipline than you. They have more leverage. They don't rely on their hands alone. They use tools that multiply their actions. There are 5 forms of leverage. Learn them or compete without them. Time, capital, people, systems, attention. That's it. Everything else is noise. Time is the weakest form of leverage. It runs out. When you sell it, you cap your upside. You stop earning the moment you stop showing up. Capital is stored effort. Money put to work can do more than muscles ever will. People multiply outcomes. One person can only do so much. A team can do what no individual ever could. Systems remove you from the equation. They produce results without your constant presence. Attention directs value. Where attention goes, money follows. That's the key. One leveraged idea can outperform years of manual labor. One system can earn more in a month than a person earns in a lifetime of grinding. This isn't unfair. It's just reality. You have a choice. You can keep competing on effort, or you can start building leverage. Most people never do because leverage requires upfront thinking. It requires patience. It requires designing before doing. And that feels slow, so they default to what feels productive: more work, more hours, more hustle. But hustle without leverage is a trap. Leverage turns effort into exponential results. Look at the difference. The worker asks, "What do I do next?" The builder asks, "What can work without me?" The worker trades time. The builder creates assets. The worker rests to recover. The builder rests while systems run. That's the difference. You don't need their permission to want this. You don't need permission to step off the treadmill. You don't need permission to stop proving how hard you work. Hard work is not the goal. Freedom is. It's not about working less. It's about making work count. Say it again. It's not about effort. It's about leverage. Here's what transformation looks like. First, audit your actions. Ask, does this multiply or does it reset tomorrow? If it resets, it's labor. If it multiplies, it's leverage. Second, stop doing what machines, systems, or other people can do better. Your time should go to decisions, not repetition. Third, build one asset. Just one. A skill that scales, content that compounds, a system that produces. Don't overcomplicate it. Fourth, protect your attention. Attention is leverage. If it's scattered, your results will be too. You have a choice. You can stay busy forever, or you can build something once and benefit repeatedly. This is where people get uncomfortable. Leverage exposes inefficiency. It shows you how much effort you've been wasting. It forces you to admit that doing more isn't the answer. So people resist it. They call it risky. They call it lazy. They call it unrealistic. But what's truly risky is relying on your body forever. What's unrealistic is thinking you can outwork time. Leverage turns effort into exponential results. The wealthy aren't superhuman. They're selective. They choose where effort goes. They don't scatter it. They think in terms of upside, not hours. Impact, not activity. That's the key. Once you understand leverage, your priorities change. You stop chasing quick wins. You start building durable advantages. You stop asking, "What keeps me busy?" You start asking, "What keeps paying?" You don't need their permission to ask better questions. You don't need permission to disappoint people who expect constant availability. Your future requires leverage, not loyalty to exhaustion. Most people never cross this line. They spend their lives perfecting effort. They never build anything that outlives a workday. Don't be most people. Because once leverage enters the equation, everything changes. Effort finally compounds. Time stops being the enemy. Results accelerate. You've learned to stop worshiping hard work. You've learned to stop glorifying busyness. Now you understand leverage, but leverage without direction can still destroy you. You're ready for the next truth. You've gained power. Now let's make sure you don't aim it wrong. Chapter 6. Discipline without direction is self-sabotage. Discipline is powerful, but it's not automatically good. That's the lie. We're taught that discipline is the answer to everything. If you just try harder, if you just stay consistent, if you just push through. But here's the truth. Discipline doesn't care where you're going. It just makes you go there faster. That's the key. Direction first, discipline second. Discipline amplifies whatever path you're on, even the wrong one, especially the wrong one. That's why so many people are exhausted and still broke. They're not lazy. They're not undisciplined. They're disciplined in the wrong direction. You have a choice. You can double down on effort, or you can step back and question the path. Most people never question it. They wake up early. They show up every day. They pride themselves on consistency, and they never ask, consistent at what? That's the trap. You can be highly disciplined at staying poor, highly disciplined at maintaining average results, highly disciplined at repeating habits that don't scale. And the more disciplined you are, the harder it becomes to stop. Because discipline creates identity. I'm a hard worker. I never quit. I push through. Those sound admirable until you realize they're keeping you stuck. Direction first, discipline second. Think about this. If you get on the wrong train, speed doesn't help. It gets you farther from where you want to be. Discipline is speed. Direction is the destination. Without direction, discipline is self-sabotage. That's the key. This is why advice like, just stay consistent, is dangerous. Consistent effort applied to a bad strategy doesn't magically turn into success. It turns into burnout. You don't need their permission to stop. You don't need permission to change course. You don't need permission to admit the plan you committed to isn't working. Most people won't do this because stopping feels like failure. Changing direction feels like weakness. It's not. It's intelligence. It's not about quitting. It's about choosing correctly. Say it clearly. It's not about discipline. It's about direction. Here's the real problem. Discipline is praised early in life. School rewards it. Jobs reward it. Society rewards people who follow instructions well. But wealth rewards people who choose direction deliberately. That's why disciplined employees often stay employees. And strategic thinkers often leap ahead with less visible effort. They pause. They assess. They redesign. Then they apply discipline with precision. That's the key. So what does transformation look like here? First, audit your discipline. Ask yourself, what am I very good at doing that isn't paying me? Be honest. Second, question the path, not your character. If something isn't working, it's not because you're broken. It's because the direction is wrong. Third, stop romanticizing consistency. Consistency is only valuable when the target is correct. Fourth, choose one direction that actually compounds. One skill, one asset, one leverage point, then apply discipline relentlessly. You have a choice. You can stay loyal to habits, or you can become loyal to outcomes. Most people choose habits because they feel familiar. Outcomes require thinking. Outcomes require responsibility. That's uncomfortable. So they stay disciplined instead. They wake up early to do things that don't matter. They push through days that don't move the needle. They confuse endurance with progress. But endurance alone doesn't create wealth. Direction first, discipline second. Once direction is clear, discipline becomes unstoppable. It stops feeling heavy. It stops feeling forced. Because now every action makes sense. You're no longer grinding. You're executing. That's the difference. This is why the same discipline that kept you stuck can suddenly make you free if you aim it correctly. Discipline isn't the enemy. Blind discipline is. You don't need their permission to pause and think. You don't need permission to redesign your life instead of muscling through it. Your future doesn't need more willpower. It needs better aim. That's the key. Most people never fix direction because they're afraid of what they'll see when they stop moving. Silence exposes truth. Stillness forces clarity. But clarity is exactly what you need, because once direction is right, effort compounds. Leverage works. Value grows. Money starts making sense. You've learned to stop worshiping hard work. You've learned to build leverage. Now you've learned to aim discipline correctly. But even with direction, there's one more thing that separates those who break free from those who stall: thinking itself. You've corrected your path. Now it's time to sharpen the tool that sets the ceiling on everything else. Chapter 7. Thinking is a skill, and most people never train it. Most people think they think. They don't. They react. They respond. They consume. That's the key. Thinking real. Thinking is a skill, and like any skill, it must be trained. Left untrained, it defaults to habit, emotion, and urgency. And that sets your ceiling. Your income grows to the level of your thinking. Read that again. Not your effort, not your hours, not your discipline, your thinking. That's why two people can face the same situation and get radically different outcomes. One reacts, the other positions. One consumes, the other creates. You have a choice. You can live in reaction, or you can learn to think strategically. Most people never make that choice. They let the world decide for them. Notifications, deadlines, opinions, fear. That's not thinking. That's coping. Strategic thinkers zoom out. They look for patterns. They consider second-order consequences. What happens after the obvious result? Workers focus on the next task. Leaders focus on the next move. That's the key. If you only think about what's in front of you, you'll always be late. If you think about where things are heading, you position early. Positioning beats reaction every time. Your income grows to the level of your thinking. This is why consuming feels productive but rarely changes anything. You scroll, you watch, you listen, you gather information, but you never synthesize it, you never apply it, you never create. Consumption fills time. Creation builds value. You don't need their permission to stop consuming. You don't need permission to think for yourself. You don't need permission to sit in silence and wrestle with ideas. Most people avoid this because thinking is uncomfortable. It exposes gaps. It forces decisions. It removes excuses. So they stay distracted. But distraction is expensive. Every hour spent reacting is an hour not spent designing. You have a choice. You can keep reacting to life, or you can start shaping it. Here's what training your thinking actually looks like. First, slow down your inputs. Less news, less noise, less amines. Thinking requires space. Second, ask better questions. Not what should I do, but what matters most. Not how do I fix this, but why does this keep happening? Third, practice long-term thinking. Before acting, ask, if this works, what happens next? And then ask again. Fourth, write your thoughts. Writing forces clarity. Vague thinking hides in your head. Clear thinking survives on paper. That's the key. It's not about intelligence, it's about intention. Say it clearly. It's not about being smart, it's about being deliberate. Most people outsource their thinking. They follow trends. They chase advice. They copy what looks successful without understanding why it worked. That's how you stay behind. Leaders don't wait for signals. They create them. They don't react to markets. They anticipate them. And anticipation only comes from trained thinking. Your income grows to the level of your thinking. Look at the difference. A reactive person asks, what do I do now? A strategic person asks, what position do I want to be in? A consumer asks, what can I learn today? A creator asks, what can I build? Same day, same resources, different outcomes. You don't need their permission to think long-term. You don't need permission to say no to urgency. You don't need permission to stop living at the mercy of your inbox. Urgency is addictive. It feels important, but it rarely builds anything that lasts. Thinking does. Here's the discipline. Schedule thinking time. Protect it. No phone. No input. Just questions and clarity. Challenge your assumptions, especially the ones that feel obvious. Obvious assumptions are often inherited, not tested. Look for second-order effects. Ask not just what an action does, but what it enables. This is how thinkers separate from workers. That's the key. Most people never train this skill, and because of that, they stay capped. Not by opportunity, but by perspective. Their income plateaus. Their growth stalls. Their options narrow, not because they lack effort, but because they never raised their thinking. You have a choice. You can keep letting life set your ceiling, or you can raise it deliberately, because once thinking becomes a skill you train, everything changes. Direction sharpens. Leverage works. Discipline compounds. Your decisions get cleaner. Your actions get fewer. Your results get bigger. And once you learn to think strategically, another truth becomes unavoidable. Time is no longer your most precious resource. You've trained your thinking. Now it's time to use it on what actually limits your freedom. Chapter 8. Stop trading time. Start building assets. Time is the most expensive thing you own. And most people sell it cheap. That's the key. They trade hours for income, days for paychecks, years for security they never actually get. And the moment they stop showing up, the money stops too. That's the trap. Assets don't work like that. Assets earn while you sleep. Labor only pays while you're present. Say it clearly. If it doesn't scale, it traps you. Most people never escape because they were taught the wrong goal. They were taught to get paid, not to build, so they chase raises, promotions, overtime, all linear, all capped. You have a choice. You can keep selling time, or you can start buying freedom. The wealthy understand something simple. Time is finite. Assets are expandable. That's the difference. An asset is anything that continues to produce value without your constant effort. A business, intellectual property, equity, scalable skills, systems that don't collapse when you step away. That's the key. Labor stops paying the moment you stop. Assets don't. And no, this isn't about quitting your job tomorrow. It's about stopping the habit of relying on one income stream tied directly to your presence. If it doesn't scale, it traps you. Here's where people get stuck. They say, I don't have time to build assets. But that's exactly why they need to. They're so busy surviving they never build anything that saves them. You don't need their permission to want more than survival. You don't need permission to build on the side. You don't need permission to think beyond next month. Most people wait for permission, a better moment, more confidence, more money. That moment never comes. Assets are built while things are imperfect. Let's break it down. Businesses create systems that sell without you personally making every transaction. Intellectual property books, content, software, framework scales. One effort across unlimited reach. Equity lets money work instead of muscles. Scalable skills increase your value without increasing your hours. Different forms, same principle. If it doesn't scale, it traps you. Trading time feels safe because it's familiar. You know what you'll get paid. You know what's expected. But familiarity is not freedom. Freedom comes from leverage, and assets are leverage stored over time. That's the key. Here's the mindset shift. Stop asking, how can I make more per hour? Start asking, how can this earn without me? Stop optimizing tasks. Start building structures. Stop perfecting effort. Start investing it. You have a choice. You can keep being needed, or you can become replaceable. Replaceable sounds scary until you realize it's the only path to freedom. If everything depends on you, you're trapped. If things run without you, you're free. It's not about working less. It's about working once. Say it clearly. It's not about time. It's about ownership. Ownership of systems. Ownership of outcomes. Ownership of leverage. Most people never build assets because they're addicted to immediate pay. Assets often pay later. But when they do, they pay bigger and longer. Delayed gratification isn't punishment. It's strategy. That's the key. Here's what to do. First, identify where your effort currently disappears. If your work leaves no trace after the day ends, it's pure labor. Second, redirect a portion of that effort into something that compounds. One piece of content, one process, one product, one system. Third, think in years, not weeks. Assets reward patience. Labor demands presence. Fourth, stop explaining your goals to people who only understand paychecks. You don't need their permission. If it doesn't scale, it traps you. This phrase should become a filter. Before you commit to something, ask, does this grow without me? Or does it die when I stop? If it dies, it's a job. If it lives, it's an asset. Both can coexist, but only one sets you free. Most people never cross this line. They get comfortable. They get busy. They tell themselves they'll build later. Later turns into never. You have a choice. You can keep renting your life out by the hour, or you can start owning pieces of your future. Because once assets enter the picture, time stops being the master. Money stops being stressful. Work stops feeling like survival. You stop running. You start building. You've learned to think strategically. You've stopped worshiping effort. You've learned to build leverage. Now there's one final enemy left, the one that quietly pulls people back into old patterns: comfort. You've learned how freedom is built. Now let's talk about why most people still never claim it. Chapter 9. Comfort is the enemy of financial freedom. Comfort feels harmless. Comfort feels earned. Comfort feels deserved. That's why it's dangerous. Most people don't fail because the path is hard. They fail because thinking differently is uncomfortable. That's the key. Comfort keeps you average. Comfort tells you not to rock the boat, not to question what's familiar, not to risk your identity for a better future. So you settle. You keep routines that no longer serve you. You protect beliefs that no longer work. You defend patterns that keep you stuck. You have a choice. You can stay comfortable, or you can become free. Wealth requires abandonment, not of values but of outdated identities. The identity of the hard worker, the identity of the reliable one, the identity of the person who plays it safe. Those identities feel good. They earn praise. They earn approval. They also earn ceilings. That's the key. Comfort keeps you average because it resists change, and change is the price of growth. Most people say they want more money, more freedom, more control, but what they really want is more of the same with better results. That doesn't exist. New outcomes require new behaviors. New behaviors require new thinking. New thinking feels uncomfortable, so people avoid it. Comfort keeps you average. Here's how it shows up. You know you should build something, but you don't. You know you should invest, but you hesitate. You know you should say no, but you keep agreeing. Not because you can't, because it feels awkward. Awkward around people who know the old you. Awkward inside an identity you've outgrown. You don't need their permission to change. You don't need permission to disappoint people who benefit from your comfort. That's the key. Comfort is often disguised as stability, but stability that limits upside is just stagnation with a nicer name. It's not about recklessness. It's not about chaos. It's not about comfort. It's about growth. Say it again. Comfort keeps you average. Wealth requires you to sit in uncertainty, to make decisions without full validation, to look foolish before you look right. That's the price. Most people won't pay it. They'll keep the familiar job. They'll keep the familiar income. They'll keep the familiar problems. Because unfamiliar problems scare them more than familiar pain. You have a choice. You can keep choosing what feels good today, or you can choose what builds power tomorrow. Here's the transformation. First, identify where comfort is costing you. What habit, relationship, or routine feels safe but produces no growth? Second, deliberately introduce discomfort. One hard conversation, one bold decision, one unfamiliar action. Third, detach from old praise. The compliments that keep you comfortable are often the ones that keep you capped. Fourth, update your identity. Stop calling yourself just anything. You're becoming something else. That's the key. It's not about motivation. It's about tolerance. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. The discipline to sit in discomfort without retreating. The discipline to stay with the unfamiliar long enough to master it. Comfort will tempt you to go back, to simplify, to shrink, to rationalize. Don't, because every time you choose comfort over growth, you reinforce the identity that keeps you average. Comfort keeps you average. Look at anyone who broke free. They didn't wait to feel ready. They acted while unsure. They let the discomfort teach them. They didn't abandon discipline. They redirected it from maintaining comfort to building capacity. That's the key. You don't need their permission to evolve. You don't need permission to want more than what's expected of you. Your future doesn't require you to be liked. It requires you to be effective. Most people never cross this line. They stay just comfortable enough to avoid pain and just stuck enough to avoid freedom. Don't be most people. Because once you outgrow comfort, something shifts. Decisions get cleaner. Fear gets quieter. Momentum builds. You stop negotiating with yourself. You start acting. You've learned how money actually works. You've learned how leverage is built. You've learned how assets replace time. Now you've learned what keeps people from using all of it: comfort. And once comfort loses its grip, there's only one thing left to do: Decide. You've removed the illusions. You've faced the discomfort. Now it's time to lock it in. Chapter 10. Decide once. Then build relentlessly. Most people don't fail because they lack motivation. They fail because they never decide. They hover. They hesitate. They keep options open. And that drains everything. That's the key. Wealth doesn't begin with inspiration. It begins with a non-negotiable internal decision, a line you draw with yourself. Decide once. Execute daily. Read that again. Most people live in constant negotiation. Should I do this? Should I stop? Should I change? Should I wait? That internal debate leaks energy. It creates friction. It turns simple actions into emotional battles. Hesitation is expensive. Clarity removes hesitation. Hesitation drains energy. That's the key. The people who build wealth don't wake up every day deciding who they're going to be. They decided once. Then they built around that decision. They don't ask, do I feel like it? They ask, what's the next step? You have a choice. You can keep renegotiating your future every morning, or you can decide and free your energy. This is where everything you've learned comes together. Hard work didn't work because it wasn't aimed. Value didn't flow because it wasn't designed. Leverage didn't compound because direction wasn't locked in. Decision fixes that. Decide once. Execute daily. A real decision is not emotional. It's structural. It changes what's allowed. It removes alternatives. I'm building assets. I'm no longer trading time. I don't chase comfort. I think long-term. Those are decisions. And once made, behavior follows. Most people never do this because commitment feels scary. Commitment closes doors. Good. Open doors drain. Focus. Closed doors create momentum. That's the key. You don't need their permission to decide. You don't need permission to choose a path and stop explaining it. Explanation invites debate. Decision invites progress. It's not about confidence. It's not about motivation. It's not about feelings. It's about discipline. Discipline applied after decision is light. Discipline without decision is heavy. That's why some people seem calm while building enormous things. They're not fighting themselves anymore. They already chose. You have a choice. You can keep waiting to feel ready, or you can decide and become ready through action. Here's what build relentlessly actually means. It doesn't mean burning out. It doesn't mean chaos. It means showing up daily to the same direction. Small steps, repeated without drama. You don't need big bursts. You need consistency aimed correctly. That's the key. Relentless doesn't mean frantic. It means unmoving. No backtracking. No constant pivots. No emotional exits. Just execution. Decide once. Execute daily. Here's how you do it. First, choose one direction that aligns with everything you've learned. Value, leverage, assets, long-term thinking. Second, remove alternatives. Stop entertaining fallback plans that pull you backward. Third, simplify actions. Decide the few daily behaviors that move you forward and eliminate the rest. Fourth, detach from outcomes in the short term. Execution is the goal. Results lag. You have a choice. You can keep chasing clarity through thinking, or you can let clarity emerge through action. Action after decision creates confidence, not the other way around. Most people get this backwards. They wait to feel certain before they move. That certainty never comes. Certainty is built. That's the key. When you decide once, something powerful happens. Noise quiets. Comparison fades. Energy consolidates. You stop leaking effort into 10 directions. You stop reacting. You start building. And building done long enough always wins. You don't need their permission to be relentless. You don't need permission to disappoint people who prefer the old you. Your future doesn't require consensus. It requires commitment. Decide once. Execute daily. This is the final separation. Most people will leave inspired and do nothing. They'll revisit these ideas later. They'll tell themselves they agree. Agreement doesn't change lives. Decision does. So make one now. Not 10. Not vague. One clear internal decision. Then build around it. Daily. Quietly. Relentlessly. Because once the decision is made, effort finally works. Leverage compounds. Assets grow. Time bends in your favor. You stop chasing success. You become aligned with it. You've dismantled the lies about hard work. You've learned how money actually moves. You've learned how freedom is built. Now there's nothing left to learn, only to decide. You've decided who you're becoming. Now it's time to live it, and that's where this book ends and your work begins.